Hello and welcome to International Women's Day 2022. My name is Agnes. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for CatholicCare Victoria, and I'm joined today by Janette.
Hi, I'm Janette. I work for CatholicCare Victoria as a family counsellor and also in the schools unit. And happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janette. So over the last few years, International Women's Day has been a focal point for organisations like CatholicCare Victoria and very much focused on gender equity, equality, diversity and inclusion. International Women's Day this year, however, coincides with the second anniversary of the start of the global pandemic, which had a profound and disproportionate impact on women across all aspects of life. Here in Victoria and Melbourne, one of the most locked down cities in the world, we saw many more professional women operating homeschooling and their home office. And it certainly was a disproportionate load, I think, on women. It's also appropriate to acknowledge the war in the Ukraine and the conflict and its, again, disproportionate impact on women. Just this week, the UNHCR stated that more than 1 million people had fled outside the Ukraine, and the majority of them are reported to be women and children. This year, the focus or the theme for International Women's Day is breaking the bias. And it is about encouraging people to commit to help forging an inclusive world. And we all, every day are responsible for our thoughts and actions. So let's break the bias. So I'd like to now pass to you, Janet, and see if there is any of your experiences where you experienced gender-related discrimination.
Thanks, Agnes. I guess, we talk about gender bias and breaking the bias and, what does that look like in a workplace? Predominantly female staff. So I think you were saying to me earlier that 82% of our staff are female. So what does that look like? I guess one experience I had when I was breastfeeding one of my children, that there was nowhere safe in a workplace that I was at the time to do that and to express breast milk. I was asked to use the toilet. Now, I know that there are women still using toilets and still on the side of the road, in their car, expressing, their nutrition for their child. I think, I was able to insist that I went and visited my child from work and was able to do that. I think, you kind of have to step up sometimes. Another time is, recently, looking at my work, is contract-based often. And, I've recently been offered an ongoing position. The first time in my 25 years I've been a social worker offered an ongoing position, but there are many people who are contract-based. It's based on funding, I understand that. However, contract work does then add that extra layer of insecurity and, it's unstable. For women, you're then taking unpaid leave during school holidays, hoping for the contract to, come around again the next year, hoping that the funding is, offered again next year. So I think, those kind of insecure work conditions need to also be considered in terms of the impact that it has on women and look at casual rates and look at, paying women, predominantly women in that field. So, those are some things that we can do, I think, as an organisation to get that gender equity. Thanks, Agnes.
Thank you, Janette. And I think it's really important that we work with government to ensure that, particularly in the social services sector, that we move away from these shorter contracts, which, as you say, more and more women, and you talked about the fact that we have 82% of our workforce here at CatholicCare Victoria are women, and how we can advocate for more secure employment for women. But I would like to acknowledge the workplace gender equality agency that was set up around 2012. And like many organizations with over 100 employees, we have to each year report with regard to certain gender equity standards. And I'm delighted to say that here at CatholicCare Victoria, we not only meet the minimum compliance standards, but we actually exceed it. And if any women watching this video or anybody watching this video wants to understand what it means to exceed the standards, we will have a link to a report that will give you some insight into what those standards are and how we at CatholicCare Victoria exceeds those standards. And it's from the board downwards that, so it is wonderful that there's such a focus on equality within the organisation, especially when here in Australia, we still have a situation where women earn around $261 per week less than men. And as you've highlighted, are disproportionately represented in casual work. So thank you for highlighting that. So I want to open up again to you, Janette, with regard to, your insights as to how you were supported from a well-being perspective during COVID-19, any of the realities of work and the challenges through that. And if you can give us examples without maybe, of when other staff, you don't have to use their names, but other staff supported you on the journey, because, we talk about building thriving, connected communities. We have to be a connected community ourselves. So over to you, Janette. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Agnes. Absolutely. I think that's possibly one of the standout things that I was, sharing about, my experience during that adverse time, that my going to work meant so much. You come, you're at home and I'm really poor teaching skills with my students at home, but then I go to work and I know exactly what I'm doing, and, the feedback is there. But there was so much, leadership from our management teams around bringing in our staff and making sure that they know that they're looked after. And it was absolutely about filling our cups. It was absolutely, there was Wellbeing Wednesdays, there was Zoom catch-ups, that there were family-friendly times, so we got to know each other's children and each other's pets, and we were able to connect on in a diverse way to ensure that I had a valuable input still during that time. There were a lot of people who were told very clearly by their organisations, you must just keep getting on with the job. You can't, have interruptions. You've got to keep getting on. For us, it was like, let's have a look at exactly what this means for the people walking in now, the extra pressure on women in family violence, and then what we saw in lockdowns, and what we saw, from family pressure was, phenomenal. So how did we then go, well, we're more able to respond because of the flexible approach to our workloads, because of our flexible approach to our families and our caring, responsibilities. How did, everyone support each other, I guess, as well? They were asking me, what professional development opportunities do you want when this all, gets back to normal? What sort of, involvement and support do you want in our organisation so that you are connected through these relationships, so that I do have a long-term relationship with this organisation? I was asked that, and people heard my responses. So there was absolute validation through that adverse time.
Thank you. As I introduced at the start, breaking the bias is the key theme of this International Women's Day 2022. However, I need us to consider a lot of the women that CatholicCare Victoria look after fleeing domestic violence, fleeing high-risk areas, in insecure employment. Many women are represented from being carers for others. And I think, when we think of breaking the bias, we absolutely need to think of those women across Victoria that who have a hurdle far greater than many of us have experienced with regard to breaking the bias. And together we need to make sure that all women are valued and celebrated, and we can forge women's equality across Victoria. I might pass over to you with regard to any takeaways for our listeners, Janette.
Well, I think that, this opportunity to do this project with you and your team has been around having a look at, how do we diversify roles? How do we engage women who have leadership skills at different levels in our organisation? How do we look at gender equity across our organisation, and how do we take those steps, and how do we have those conversations where we do pay people that have been in the industry for a long time to actually, do the work that we love, and honour that. So thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. And Janette, I want to honour you for 25 years as a social worker. It is an extraordinary achievement. Your ability to serve others and put others before you and your family is extraordinary. So thank you. And I want to congratulate all women on International Women's Day. Enjoy the day.
Thanks.
Break the bias.